Hello everybody, this is Oliver from Neo and today we are going to talk about black tea versus green tea. Today I'm gonna give you a small beginner guide into these two different teas and talk a little bit about the differences. So as some of you might know, black tea and green tea is coming from the same plant, so called Camellia sinensis, but there are slight differences, and these differences they come out of the production process of these two teas. Where you take first the green tea also in the same color as the original plant is actually steeped or pan-fired directly after the harvest. This makes the production of green tea different to black tea, keeping the greenness of the plant or of the tea leaves, and then after the steeping or this pan firing which is done, then the liquid is taken out of the leaves and the leaves are dried. What does this actually do? So green tea is known to keep a lot of its original nutrients in it, especially the so-called amino acid EGCG is kept in the leaves. Theanine is kept in the leaves. It's also an amino acid, so most of the amino acids they are really kept in the leaves, and especially vitamins which are not reduced in the leaves of the green tea. So it makes it very full and very packed with nutrients. And what is also nice about green tea, due to the high amount of theanine and the caffeine together, they work in as kind of a collaboration in keeping not this shot of caffeine which you know from black tea or from coffee, but really give you a stable awakeness, and the theanine additionally it relaxes you, so you awake and relaxed at the same time. On green tea itself, what is also special, especially to black tea, is that especially one breed of, or one varietal of Camellia sinensis is used, and this is the varietal Camellia sinensis. So these this green tea plant is mostly used in China and in Japan, and there are different cultivars, so different breeds of this Camellia sinensis. And finally, you have very different taste profiles already within the segment. What is important that as the green tea is a more subtle taste than a black tea, and it is finer in its taste differences and in its taste notes, there you also need a plant which is lighter in bitterness, so which has less catechins in it. And still you can have green teas which are quite bitter, but they never have as much bitter catechins in the leaves than, for example, the black tea which I'm going to talk about, or the main black tea varietal. So you will use mainly smooth green tea plants or green tea varietals, and then within this you can even find much more. So there are around 500 different cultivars in the world, so different tea breeds if you want so, and 50 of them, or 50 alone in Japan. So it's a huge and very broad spectrum of tastes. And finally, you have to decide and find out a little bit for yourself what is your absolute favorite. Here we have a Yabukita. This is the most common in Japan. So 80% of all the tea produced in Japan is made out of Yabukita. This one we will taste later. Now, coming to the black tea. Like the story of black tea, or how black tea got really big. So it is actually the most consumed tea in the world. Second is green tea. And what is important to see is that especially the English did push black tea enormously in the time of their colonization. So Major Robert Bruce is one of the main characters also in this whole spectrum of black tea. He played an important role as he went to India. He discovered the varietal Assam, so Camellia sinensis Assam, and Assam is known to be also, in comparison also to the green tea varietals, Camellia sinensis. This tea has bigger leaves and it shows much more bitterness or much more bitter flavors in the leaves. But as it is growing pretty fast in India, it has bigger leaves. It was very interesting to do black tea with this and then to have a high production volume, also a little bit in the fight of England versus China as the biggest tea exporter at that time. So as they rolled out their black tea over the world, Assam is still nowadays a very, very important part of the whole black tea production, having more stringency. But what is nice about the black tea is that due to the fermentation, so it's a fully fermented tea, the black tea has a lot of catechins, but in the fermentation process they get smoothened out, and finally you have a much smoother taste of the black tea. And this is also the reason, for example, also in Japan, this is an important point, and this is something the farmers explained us when we were visiting them. Actually, what they're using are kind of benifuki, for example, is a typical oolong or even a black tea cultivar, a little bit more bitter, so you don't really drink it as a green tea, but it's a very good tea for a black tea. And as the bitter notes, they transfer into smoother notes due to the fermentation. This is a cultivar which is used often, and the Assam being the most known on an international basis, and they could produce a lot of tea. What does happen actually? So what's the difference also in the production of the black tea? Black tea is, so after the harvest, it is laid out, it withers a little bit, and like this the fermenting enzymes, they develop in the leaves. Then they chop the leaves and they let the fermentation take place fully, and then heat the leaves to stop the fermentation process at the end, depending on how much they want to ferment it. And then finally you have a black tea coming out. Black tea much stronger in taste than the green tea. And what is also beautiful about black tea, that you got also a little bit this more caramelic notes, this little bit different kind of wooden and dark chocolate notes which are coming out of the black tea. But finally the black tea is considered to be more of a tea for enjoyment, while green tea is really strongly linked to its health benefits, due to the fact that the Chinese nor the Japanese, they really drink or they nearly didn't drink black tea, due to the fact that green tea is considered or strongly linked to its health benefits. For example, black tea loses the vitamins. It has a rather low amount of theanine. Amino acids as well are lost due to, or mostly lost due to, the fermentation process. So it's really more an enjoyment or enjoyment of tea, and it's much stronger in taste finally. So you will see that when you drink green tea and you really specialize on the green tea, a positive effect, versus for example the black tea, that your palate really gets fine and you really have a high ability, or you create a high ability to see different taste notes and realize different taste notes out of food. Wine maybe you might drink, so your palate comes much more delicate. Meanwhile, the flavor profile of the black tea is really strong around its notes of this chocolate and more caramel flavor. But very interesting, here we have brought here back from Japan, from Mr. Watanabe from Yakushima. So he does a black tea and a green tea. It's the same farmer, so I really can compare the black tea varietal versus the green tea varietal, knowing also that as the green tea he uses is also used for the green tea. The black tea has an even smoother and a little more sweeter note to it, which is pretty nice.